This is African American History is American History. Welcome. I'm your host, Harlan Kearsley. This program's goal is to foster understanding, promote discussion, and expand knowledge through stories of historical events, bios of unsung heroes, as well as timely and relevant news stories which will paint a vivid picture of the effects of segregation, discrimination, and bigotry on the lives of both blacks and whites. Comparisons will be made between the many racially fractured periods of American history and what's going on right now. Slavery was abolished just 150 years ago. Jim Crow only 50 years ago. Yet stop and frisk, voter ID, stand your ground, income inequality, and a host of other current problems are proof that their detrimental effects continue to be felt, and that the struggle for equal rights for all must continue. The year is 1945. World War II has come to an end. And of the over 125,000 African Americans who were sent overseas, none would receive the Medal of Honor. Their tasks in the war were largely reserved to non-combat units. Even though they were U.S. citizens, they were treated with less respect than the enemy. During the war, black soldiers even had to give up their seats on trains to Nazi prisoners. Most African American soldiers still served only as truck drivers and as stevedores, or on board Navy vessels as mess attendants. However, there were some exceptions. The 761st Tank Battalion, which was formed in the spring of 1942 and nicknamed Patton's Black Panthers, and the Army Air Force's 332nd Fighter Escort Group, and the 477th Bombardment Group, both known as the Tuskegee Airmen. In December of 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, General Dwight D. Eisenhower found himself severely short of replacement troops for the existing white military units, so he made the decision to allow African American soldiers to pick up a weapon and fight side by side with the white military units for the first time. More than 2,000 black soldiers had volunteered to go to the front. Their courage and bravery during that decisive battle forced the United States military to rethink their segregation policy. A total of 708 African Americans were killed in combat during World War II. Yet, it would take over 50 years and a presidential order before the U.S. Army reviewed their records in order to award any medals of honor to black soldiers. On June 29, 1947, Harry S. Truman became the first president to speak to the NAACP. He made a strong speech on civil rights, not only to the members of the NAACP, but to the nation, since his speech was broadcast on radio, where they met on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Roosevelt, Senator Morris, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to be present at the closing session of the 38th Annual Conference of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The occasion of meeting with you here at the Lincoln Memorial affords me the opportunity to congratulate the association upon its effective work for the improvement of our democratic processes. I should like to talk to you briefly about civil rights and human freedom. It is my deep conviction that we have reached a turning point in the long history of our country's efforts to guarantee freedom and equality to all our citizens. Recent events in the United States and abroad have made us realize that it is more important today than ever before to ensure that all Americans enjoy these rights. When I say all Americans, I mean all Americans. The civil rights laws written in the early years of our republic and the traditions which have been built upon them are precious to us. Those laws were drawn up with the memory still fresh in men's minds of the tyranny of an absentee government. They were written to protect the citizen against any possible tyrannical act by the new government in this country. But we cannot be content with a civil liberties program which emphasizes only the need of protection against the possibility of tyranny by the government. We cannot stop there. We must keep moving forward with new concepts of civil rights to safeguard our heritage. The extension of civil rights today means not protection of the people against the government, but protection of the people by the government. We must make the federal government a friendly, vigilant defender of the rights and equalities of all Americans. And again, I mean all Americans. As Americans, we believe that every man should be free to live his life as he wishes. He should be limited only by his responsibility to his fellow countrymen. If this freedom is to be more than a dream, each man must be guaranteed equality of opportunity. The only limit to an American's achievement should be his ability, his industry, and his character. These rewards for his effort should be determined only by those truly relevant qualities. Our immediate task is to remove the last remnants of the barriers which stand between millions of our citizens and their birthright. There is no justifiable reason for discrimination because of ancestry or religion or race or color. We must not tolerate such limitations on the freedom of any of our people and on their enjoyment of basic rights which every citizen in a truly democratic society must possess. Every man should have the right to a decent home, the right to an education, the right to adequate medical care, the right to a worthwhile job, the right to an equal share in making the public decisions through the ballot, and the right to a fair trial in a fair court. We must ensure that these rights on equal terms are enjoyed by every citizen. To these principles, I pledge my full and continued support.
On February 2nd, 1948, Truman sent the first comprehensive civil rights bill to Congress. It incorporated some of the 35 recommendations of his commission. In July of 1948, over the strong objection of senior military officers, Truman issued Executive Order 9981, which banned racial discrimination in the U.S. Armed Forces. He also issued Executive Order 9980, which integrated the federal government. All government facilities had previously been segregated under President Woodrow Wilson. Truman's actions meant that the armed forces and federal agencies would lead the way over the decades for integration of the workplace, public facilities, schools, and housing in the United States. I'm Harlan Kearsley. On behalf of everyone here at African American History's American History, thank you for listening. And remember, none of us can truly embrace the future until we first confront the past. African American History's American History, copyright H.C. Kearsley, 2015.